Everybody, and welcome back to Trudge, a journey to being recovered. My name is Dexter. I am a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. Welcome back to the program. Last week we left off with finishing step 5 in the chapter called Into Action. This week we are going to pick right up off where we left on page 76. We're going to read the first 2 paragraphs of that page, which are going to begin steps 6 and 7. The big book doesn't really give a whole lot for steps 6 and 7. So, like I mentioned to you guys at the end of last week's submission, to please go out and get yourself this book, The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to be doing 6 and 7 out of that book. You know, while the big book is, very specific in the actions and the prayers that it lists on page 76 for these 2 steps, it was very beneficial to me to go a little bit more in depth. The 12 and 12 written by Bill W. was, published, almost 10, 11 years after the big book was written. And, these 2 steps to me are like the forgotten steps. This is a big part of the program that I didn't have. I just thought being sober to be sober was enough. And for some people it is, but it wasn't enough for me. I had to change my ways, and step 6 and 7, coupled with 4 and 5 was a big growth spurt for me in my spiritual program and along my journey to being recovered. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to do step 6 out of the 12 and 12. Hopefully we can get through it. I hope everyone's doing well in your world. Let's go ahead and say a 3rd step prayer for those of you who care to join, and then get started with the work today, shall we? God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. So, top of page 76, guys. If we can answer to our satisfaction, and they're talking about the actions that are listed on the previous page that end step 5. If you can answer those questions to your satisfaction, we then look at step 6. So that's where we're at now. Now, mind you, granted, we don't want to go to this point until we have thoroughly gone through our list of resentments in step 4 and highlighted some of our, more glaring character defects, if not all of them, picked out the patterns that no longer serve us well, the things that are keeping us sick, and shared this with another person, whether it be your sponsor or somebody else. You don't want to gloss over that part with a minimum of concern. You want to know that you've done the most searching, fearless, and thorough inventory that you possibly have, and then shared it with another human being before taking on this new venture. Okay? I'm assuming everybody that's watching at this point and ready to go on with this work has done so. It says, we have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. The word willingness is always going to be underlined in any work that we're doing here, along the lines of Trudge. This is going to be highlighted green. These are some 6th step actions. It says, are we now ready to let God remove from us all things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can He now take them all? So how do we know that, they're objectionable to us? We found these things out in our 4th step. We've done some digging. More has been revealed over the days or weeks that it's taken you to do your inventory. You have a list. You're very well versed in what the things that are keeping you sick at this point. The next sentence says, and it's going to be highlighted pink. Pink stands for prayers. If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. God to help us let go of the things to which we still cling. Some of those things for me were stealing, procrastination, manipulation, dishonesty. All things that I carried around with me my first 11 years of sobriety. And I thought everything was fine because I was sober, but the truth of the matter is that I was still dealing with untreated alcoholism. I had never gotten right inside. I just stopped putting the drink inside me, the drugs inside me, but I hadn't changed at all. It was very minimal the amount of changes that I made. I mean, the really only big change that I had made was I wasn't drinking anymore. I wasn't drugging anymore. step 6 and 7, they address these. You know, these are almost like the forgotten steps in my estimation, two of the most important steps in the whole 12. And it's interesting to me how the big book doesn't really have too much on them, you know. And so that's all we have for step 6. That's it. You know, next week we'll start step 7 from where we ended off. But now we're going to make our first switch from the big book into our 12 steps and 12 traditions. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody to take a second, grab their 12 and 12, and to open up to page 63. Now, mind you, this is just the book that I used for steps 6 and 7 that my sponsor used with me. I took it upon myself, however, to go throughout this book and read it all. You know, there came a time where my sponsor couldn't give me what I needed. She got busy, and I was hungry for this. I wanted to learn more, you know, and so I started to take it upon myself to read more about the extensive writings of Bill W. and, you know, about the path, about the steps, about the, you know, the goal that we're trying to attain here. And I believe some of his most masterful writings are in this book. So on page 63, we're going to start. It says step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. There's some key words in that. The first one is going to be entirely. You know, if you're not entirely ready to have that removed, then it's probably not going to go. You know, you're probably not going to be willing to put the effort into it, and you're probably going to, you know, hang on to it a lot longer than you probably should. Just like, you know, many of us hung on to our drinking and drugging a lot longer than we needed to. It's no different. It really is, and it's just we are replacing that substance for a lot of other things in this you know, capacity. This other key word, all. God remove all these defects of character, not some. You know, you're not going to realize that you have this list of things that just don't serve you well, that are causing you and other people harm, and ask God to take some of them, when the others, hanging on to them, is going to keep you disconnected from your true self, your God of your understanding, and other people. You want them all gone. Okay? This is the step that separates the men from the boys. So declares a well-loved clergyman who happens to be one of AA's greatest friends. I believe that too. Like, people who have really worked the steps and had spiritual awakenings and recovered, they've worked a solid 6 and 7. You know, it's gone so much deeper for them than the drink or the drug. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6 on all his faults, there's that word all again, we're going to circle all, without any reservations whatever. Now I have without any reservations whatever, I have that underlined, it's in italics, you know, and what they're trying to tell you is that we're doing this and we're not going to worry, you know, like there's not going to be this, well, if my mom dies I might drink type of thing, or if, you know, I lose my job I might act out again. We're doing this without any reservations, okay? Has indeed come a long way spiritually, and is therefore entitled to be a man who is sincerely trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own Creator. So I have in the image and likeness of his own Creator, I have that underlined as well. That's really the goal here, you know, God's will. That's what we're shooting for, you know, and so anybody that's continually, repeatedly trying to, you know, work on some of these defects of character, these worst items in stock, like the big book talks about, and have them removed, you know, they are entitled to be called a man or a woman that is sincerely trying to be more like the God of their understanding. Of course, the often disputed question of whether God can and will, under certain conditions, remove defects of character will be answered with a prompt affirmative by almost any AA member. I believe almost any AA member who's done the work can say that, but there's a lot of us who haven't done the work. I spent over a decade and didn't do the work, so I couldn't really answer to that, and if I did, you know, it was talking out of my neck because I didn't really know. To him, this proposition will be no theory at all. It will be just about the largest fact in his life. The word fact is circled, and that's how I feel. You know, my relationship with God is the most important thing I have. You know, there's just no question about it, and I know today that anybody that puts the work into this program, into these steps, they're going to find relief. It'll be a fact of their life. This is what happened. I did this, and I found relief, okay? He will usually offer proof in a statement like this. And any recovered alcoholic can say this statement because they understand exactly what they're talking about here. Sure, I was beaten, absolutely licked. My own willpower just wouldn't work on alcohol or whatever the substance is or whatever the problem is. Just substitute it. It's absolutely applicable there, okay? Change of scene. The best efforts of family, friends, doctors, and clergymen got no place with my alcoholism. And that was my story too. You know, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, I did it all. You know, going to different churches, sweat lodges. You know, they were helpful and these people really cared about me, but what the bottom line is, they couldn't keep me from drinking or drugging. I simply couldn't stop drinking, and no human being could seem to do the job for me. Again, talking about being placed beyond human aid, you know. But when I became willing, there's that word willing again, let's go ahead and circle that, to clean house. And that clean house, that's what we're talking about. That's the work we're doing. That's what we've just done. If you've, you know, already done your inventory, that's that 4-step stuff. That's all these 12 steps, honestly. I have the words clean house underlined. And then ask the higher power, God, as I understood him or as you understand him, to give me release. My obsession to drink vanished. It was lifted right out of me. So, I tell you what, that's what happened to me, you know. But it happened differently for me, you know. When I finally started working these steps, I had been clean and sober for quite a while. And, you know, the obsession to drink was, you know, I didn't want to drink. But it hadn't really been removed. You know, I kind of woke up every day trying to slay the dragon and put some real willpower to it, and then used my mind and was strong-willed and didn't drink. But if I would have been in certain situations during that time, I may have picked up. You know, I just didn't. I was afraid. Obsession had never been removed. Doing this work, that's what happened for me. The obsession was removed. I don't worry about it anymore because I don't have that obsession anymore. It was right around the 6th step where, you know, I bit my nails for a long time. 30, 35 years, tried to stop on my own, always went back. It's just a disgusting habit. It's just gross, you know, but I could never stop. I worked step 6 around this, and I had that obsession to do that removed, and it's been over 2 years. Just don't do it anymore, you know. What's the difference? I believe God removed that obsession, and you can have that with anything that you're struggling with. You know, we get to, you know, this is a testament to people out there that this can work for you. Drugs, alcohol, sex, you know, whatever it is, you know, it can work for you, but we have been placed beyond human aid more than likely if we're that beaten and that desperate. And when we become willing and turn to God with these problems, we tend to get results. Page 64. In AA meetings all over the world, statements just like this are heard daily. It is plain for everyone to see that each sober AA member has been granted a release from this very obstinate and potentially fatal obsession. So in a very complete and literal way, all AAs have become entirely ready to have God remove the mania for alcohol from their lives. And God has proceeded to do exactly that, you know, and many of us, I mean, we tried to stop on our own. You know, what do you think? We just one day stopped miraculously? You know, our higher powers have done this for us. They've done for us what we could not have done for ourselves. Again, most important part of how it works, God could and would if he were sought. And we find release. This is not just my story or Bill's story. This is the story of millions of recovered drug addicts and alcoholics throughout history. The next paragraph is going to be highlighted orange. I have a star next to this. This is pretty important. So having been granted a perfect release from alcoholism, why then shouldn't we be able to achieve the same means a perfect release from every other difficulty or defect? And we can. You know, we absolutely can. I was shocked to find out that things like stealing or lying or nail biting, these obsessions could be removed as well. I kind of felt like I'd just be that way forever, you know, when being clean was enough and I wasn't hurting anybody anymore, you know, and I wasn't drinking and the physical aspect of my life was changing because I wasn't putting drugs in my body anymore and everything was great. And then I had worked this step, and it was like finding gold. It really was. This is a riddle of our existence, the full answer to which may only be in the mind of God. Nevertheless, at least part of the answer is apparent to us. When men and women pour so much alcohol into themselves that they destroy their lives, they commit a most unnatural act. Defying their instinctive desires for self-preservation, they seem bent upon self-destruction. They work against their own deepest instinct. As they are humbled by the terrific beating administered by alcohol or whatever their issues are, the grace of God can enter and expel their obsession. So, I mean, let's go ahead and highlight that. I think that should be highlighted. I already have stars around it. So we'll start from the words, as they are humbled, and we're going to end with the words, expel their obsession. That needs to be highlighted. Here, their powerful instinct to live can cooperate fully with the Creator's desire to give them new life. For nature and God alike abhor suicide. You know, we're not here to take ourselves out. You know, God's got bigger plans for us, and this is one of the ways that many of us get there. Okay? But most of our other difficulties don't fall under such a category at all. Every normal person wants, for example, to eat, to reproduce, to be somebody in society of his fellows, and he wishes to be reasonably safe and secure as he tries to attain these things. Indeed, God made him that way. This is all going to be underlined to the end of the paragraph. It says, he did not design man to destroy himself by alcohol, but he did give man instincts to help him stay alive. You know, we're not here to kill ourselves. You know, we all have a purpose. You know, and when we draw near to God, that's revealed to us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it is. Page 65. It is nowhere evident, at least in this life, that our Creator expects us fully to eliminate our instinctual drives. So far as we know, it is nowhere on the record that God has completely removed from any human being all his natural drives. Since most of us are born with an abundance of natural desires, it isn't strange that we often let these far exceed their intended purpose. When they drive us blindly, or we willfully demand that they supply us with more satisfactions or pleasures than are possible or due us, that is the point at which we depart from the degree of perfection that God wishes for us here on earth. And, you know, I struggled with that in relations to money, in relations to sex, and it's like a major entitlement, you know, it's just like abusing, you know, all these things that we're given when they're not meant to be used in that fashion. That measure of our character defects, or, if you wish, of our sins. Bill starts to get kind of preachy with the of our sins thing. I really don't know what to make of that. I try to keep it, you know, about my, you know, worst items in stock, about my character defects, you know. Sins to me sounds a little religious. I just try to keep the two of them separate. That's what works for me, you know. I try to keep the spirituality aspect of this program different than the religious aspect of the program that you may be working or other people's. The next sentence here is going to be highlighted orange, okay? It says, if we ask, God will certainly forgive our derelictions, but in no case does he render us white as snow and keep us that way without our cooperation. I have the words without our cooperation circled. So it's telling you that there's some work to be done. You know, you don't draw near to God, you don't pray for God to remove this defect of character or help you with this issue, and he just goes bing, and it's gone. Sometimes that's the case, as in with, you know, some of our obsessions to drink alcohol. You know, it just got to be removed. But in other cases, there's some work we have to do. You know, I'm a real impatient guy. It's a bad character defect of mine when it comes to driving, waiting on lines, things of that nature, you know. It was on my character defect list, and I worked a solid 6 and 7 around that. And I tell you what, the minute I prayed for release and to be a little bit more patient and tolerant of people, places, and things, everywhere I went, I was forced into situations where I had to be patient. Whether it was on the line to get gas, or at the supermarket, I was always on the longest line, or waiting for something to come in the mail that should have been there days ago, that wasn't there. I mean, I had to do some work around that. I had to be willing to do some work around the act of being patient. You know, same thing with like nail biting. You know, I had to really want to not do it. I had to force myself to not do it. Some things, the obsession to do is just going to be expelled from you. Other things, you're going to have to put a lot of work into, and sometimes be content with patient improvement, which is what this next sentence is going to talk about. And this whole next sentence is going to be underlined. It says, that is something we are supposed to be willing to work towards ourselves. Okay? We have to do that work. He asks only that we try as best we know to make progress in the building of character. You know, we have to make progress. So, you know, sometimes I would try to beef myself up, especially when I, you know, met new people, because I wanted to be liked, I wanted to be accepted, and I would tell things, I would make up stories and say things that weren't true. You know, what God wanted me to do is, number one, not do that, but if I did do that, to go ahead and to out myself. You know, that's where the growth is. You know, I put myself on blast. You know what, that wasn't true. This is what really happened. You know, and I had to do that a lot with a lot of people, you know, until telling the truth became second nature. And how did it become second nature? Because I practiced telling the truth, and God did what he had to do. He took care of his results. These are some of the things that Step 6 is talking about that go so much further than drinking alcohol or using drugs as being the problem. That was a problem when we got here. But see, these are some of the problems that we hold on to. And by not working steps, our alcoholism, our drug addiction goes untreated. This is how you have a spiritual awakening and have these things removed from you. So step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, is AA's way of stating the best possible attitude one can take in order to make a beginning on this lifetime job. Now, this does not mean that we expect all our character defects to be lifted out of us as the drive to drink was. Like I was just saying, that's, you know, if that's your case, man, God bless you. That's awesome. You know, that didn't happen for me. You know, some things did, some things I still struggle with, man. You know, and I have to catch myself. You know, I have to really pay attention. I have to use my God consciousness. I have to stay sharp, you know. It takes work. A few of them may be, but with most of them we shall have to be content with patient improvement. The words content with patient improvement underlined. We're going to have to accept that, you know, this is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. If we're better today than we were yesterday, we're doing it right. You know, we're not just going to one day be enlightened, be on some hilltop somewhere and some sweat lodge or the Dalai Lama or turn into Eckhart Tolle or that's, you know, Deepak Chopra. I mean, we're just normal people trying to get well. You know, not there's anything wrong with any of those people, but sometimes it's going to be a while before some of this stuff is permanently eradicated, or it may not ever go away. That doesn't mean we don't work at it. We have to do the footwork. Our higher power does the results, okay? The key words, entirely ready. Those two words are going to be underlined, entirely ready. We're going to highlight the rest of this sentence orange. It says the key words entirely ready underline the fact that we want to aim at the very best we can know or learn. So the very best for me and I can know or learn is to always tell the truth. You know, is to not steal. You know, is to be faithful. You know, things that I definitely struggled with both in and out of the rooms. But that's the very best I can. You know, that's why. How do I know? Because that's what God wants for me. You know, I don't always know what God's will is for me, but I'll tell you what, I most certainly know what it's not. And it's not to live the way that I was. People who are recovered, that person gets to go away. You know, the motherboard has been wiped, and we have rewired you. You've had new sets of conceptions and thoughts come to dominate the person you are. And that's what we're talking about. We want to be the best at what we know it is we're trying to get after. Okay? How many of us have this degree of readiness? In an absolute sense, practically no one has it. The best we can do, with all the honesty that we can summon, is to try. The word try is circled, to try to have it. Okay? Even the best of us will discover, to our dismay, that there is always a sticking point, a point at which we say, no, I can't give this up yet. I know a lot of people that struggle with smoking cigarettes. I just can't give it up yet. You know, food is a big one for a lot of people. I'm just not ready to do that yet, you know? And we shall awful tread on even more dangerous ground when we cry, this I will never give up. Now, that's dangerous, you know, to think that, well, I'm just going to hold on to this. If it's not serving you well at some point, you're going to have to give it up. Or it could take you back out, you know. Such is the power of our instincts to overreach themselves. The next sentence is going to be underlined. It says, no matter how far we have progressed, desires will always be found which oppose the grace of God. Well, and boy, if that's not the double truth, you know, I mean, a recovered addict alcoholic, and sometimes like I gotta be careful when I'm out there and in the streets in the world of things that come my way. I gotta be, every now and then, like, I'm in a committed relationship, and all of a sudden there she is, and she thinks I'm cute. How am I gonna act? Or all of a sudden I'm out, somewhere, and I'm doing some shopping, and I'm like, wow, no one would see if I was just walked off with that. How am I going to act? These are things that are going to show up that are absolutely going to oppose my higher power's will for me. And it's at those moments I have to recognize where I'm at, and it's usually selfish, self-centered, fearful, dishonest, one of those things. It's like you got to beware of the four horsemen. It's not something that you just get to be without continuing to put the work in. Recovered addicts, alcoholics, there is work that is entailed with staying that way. I can't stay fed on what I ate yesterday. I have to feed it today. And when these things come up, because life shows up, you know what I mean? I might find a wallet on the ground full of money, and there's identification in there. What am I going to do? The right thing to do would be to turn that money in, but boy, money is a huge tempter for a lot of people. I struggle with money. I could use a couple extra bucks right now. What am I going to do? This happened to me at my restaurant the other day. Someone left an iPhone. A lot of people travel through, they're tourists. That could be anyone's. I'm a manager there. I could have just kept it, but the right thing to do is, to try to do some homework and do some research throughout the phone. And I got the person on the phone, and that phone was mailed back to that person. And I'm happy that I did that, because the person I used to be, I would have taken that phone and sold it or used it or whatever. Selfish and self-centered. But the thought showed up, because that's how I used to live. And it's telling you that there are going to always be things, desires that are going to always oppose the grace of your higher power. Pay attention, and do that 10-step on yourself. Check in with where you're at. More times than not, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, or afraid is one of the phases that we're going through, okay? Some who feel they have done well to dispute this, so let's try to think it through a little further. Practically everybody wishes to be rid of his most glaring and destructive handicaps. No one wants to be so proud that he is scorned as a braggart, nor so greedy that he is labeled as a thief. No one wants to be angry enough to murder, lustful enough to rape, gluttonous enough to ruin his health. No one wants to be agonized by the chronic pain of envy, or to be paralyzed by sloth. Of course, most human beings don't suffer these defects at these rock bottom levels, but we're not most human beings, man. We're addicts and alcoholics. We take things to the extreme. A lot of us live in absolutes. I know I did. We who have escaped these extremes are apt to congratulate ourselves. Yet can we? After all, hasn't it been self-interest, pure and simple, that has enabled most of us to escape? Not much spiritual effort is involved in avoiding excesses which will bring us punishment anyway. But when we face up to the less violent aspects of these very same defects, then where do we stand? What we must recognize now is that we exult in some of our defects. We really love them. We really hold on to some of these things. Some of us, including myself, okay, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, because I do this too. I'm not special. I hang on to this stuff and don't even know I'm hanging on to it. I can get so lost and so wrapped up. The world's a busy place. I've got a life. And before you know it, I have to really, that's where checking in. Always that God consciousness. Prayer, meditation, that's where these things come in. And we'll talk more about this stuff as we get later in the program through the steps, step 10, 11. So, we must recognize that we exalt in some of our defects. We really love them. Who, for example, doesn't like to feel a little superior to the next fellow? Or even quite a lot superior? Isn't it true we like to let greed masquerade as ambition? To think of liking lust seems impossible. But how many men and women speak love with their lips and believe what they say, so they can hide lust in a dark corner of their minds? And even while staying within conventional bounds, many people have to admit that their imaginary sex excursions are all apt to be dressed up as dreams of romance. Bill is just taking us to task here, because these are some of the things that I know he probably struggled with, and we struggle with these things too. And we haven't talked about alcohol at all in this, in this page. This is some of the stuff that, left untreated, will bring us back to drinking and drugging. This is good stuff. Very masterfully written. Self-righteous anger can also be very enjoyable. Anybody, who has like gone through a divorce or hates their boss or has rough neighbors understands that, you know. In a perverse way, we can actually take satisfaction from the fact that many people annoy us, for it brings us a comfortable feeling of superiority. I didn't even realize that was going on. A lot of times I was acting this way in reference to people who piss me off or the like. Gossip barbed with anger, a polite form of murder by character assassination, has its satisfactions for us too. I mean, that's one I struggle with big. Gossip's definitely on my 6-step list, you know, going to meetings and seeing people and taking their inventory. I did that for years. You know, it's like, I understand now, one of the most bare things I can get out of a meeting is to practice non-judgment. Because being judgmental, gossip, character assassination, that's a sick trait of character. And it keeps the focus off me. That's the biggest thing. You know, it keeps me worrying about what they're doing and not what I'm doing. God wants me to worry about what I'm doing, okay? Here we are not trying to help those we criticize. We are trying to proclaim our own righteousness. And look, let's face it, we all do this. We all struggle with this at one time or another in our lives. It's a tough one. When gluttony is less than ruinous, we have a milder word for that. We call it taking our comfort. We live in a world riddled with envy. To a greater or less degree, everybody is infected with it. From this defect, we must surely get a warped yet definite satisfaction. Else, why would we consume such great amounts of time wishing for what we have not rather than working for it? Or angrily looking for attributes we shall never have instead of adjusting to the fact and accepting it. I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, everybody should be able to relate to this. I know I most certainly can. And how often do we work hard with no better motive than to be secure and slothful later on? Only we call that retiring. Consider, too, our talents for procrastination. I highlighted procrastination orange. It's probably my #1 character defect. I mean, believe me when I tell you, it's only by God's grace and the will to stay recovered that I make sure I do this video every single week. You know, because I like the way I feel, I like the life that I live, but I can procrastinate the hell out of this. I can find reasons not to do it. And believe me, for the hour that it takes, it's ridiculous, but it's still something that I oftentimes struggle with. So I highlighted that. I know a lot of us struggle with procrastination, which is really sloth in 5 syllables. Nearly anyone could submit a good list of such defects as these, and few of us would seriously think of giving them up, at least until they cause us excessive misery. And that's what happened to me, man. The lying, the manipulation caught up with me. The stealing caught up with me. You know, acting out sexually caught up with me. All that stuff caught up with me the same way drugs and alcohol was catching up with me. And these things caught up with me in the rooms, clean and sober, you know. And so untreated alcoholism almost sent me back out there, you know, without working the steps and having a spiritual awakening. It was a matter of time for me. The clock was ticking, the fuse was lit, I was doomed. It's only by God's grace that I had the right people, you know, to show me how to get to where I'm at now, and I'm so grateful. It's one of the reasons why I do this out there for you, because I know this stuff that's on this page, people are struggling with and without time. There's no question about it. Some people, of course, may conclude that they are indeed ready to have all such defects taken from them. But even these people, if they construct a list of still milder defects, will be obliged to admit that they prefer to hang on to some of them. Therefore, it seems plain that a few of us can quickly or easily become ready to aim at spiritual and moral perfection. I have moral perfection underlined, and it states that we want to only settle for as much perfection as will get us by in life, according, of course, to our various and sundry ideas of what will get us by. This is going to all be underlined and highlighted to the end of the paragraph. It says, so the difference between the boys and the men, the difference between the people doing the work and not doing the work, okay, is the difference between striving for a self-determined objective and for the perfect objective, which is God. So my selfish, self-centered ways had me thinking that if I just got enough money, enough sex, she looked good enough, the right job, that I'd be happy forever and I'd never have any problems. That's not true. You know, my objective for me today is what God's will for me is what God wants for me, okay? That's the most important thing, is God's will for me in my life. That's huge, okay? Taking the selfish, self-centered aspect away and focusing on what the will of God is for you. By this time, you should be getting feelings of what those are, having worked a solid 2nd, 3rd step, 4th, 5th step, now doing 6th. this stuff's definitely coming to you. The promises should be starting to happen for you if you're doing the actions, okay? Many will at once ask, how can we accept this entire implication of step 6? Why? That is perfection. This sounds like a hard question, but practically speaking, it isn't. Only step 1, where we made 100% admission that we were powerless over alcohol, can be practiced with absolute perfection, okay? Just to concede to our innermost selves that we are alcoholics or drug addicts, that's the only one that we can do perfectly every single time, okay? The remaining 11 steps stay perfect ideals, and we're trying to do our best to attain these ideals in all our affairs. They are goals towards which we look and the measuring sticks by which we estimate our progress. Seen in this light, step 6 is still difficult, but not at all impossible. It's not impossible. None of the steps are impossible. They've been done for years, and people follow them with, great efforts, and their lives get better. The only urgent thing is that we make a beginning and keep trying, Let's go ahead and highlight that last sentence. Make a beginning and keep trying. Gotta keep trying. If you don't try, you'll never have an opportunity to succeed. And that's where that paying attention comes in. Around this step, my sponsor would always say, Dex, pay attention. Pay attention to your surroundings, pay attention to people around you, what you're doing, how you're feeling, how you're acting. Check in with God. Are you living according to His will for you? Are you engaging in defects of character, which you have now readily found in your character defect inventory, in your resentment inventory? Are you still doing those things? Pay attention. Keep your eyes wide open, okay? If we would gain any real advantage in the use of this step on problems other than alcohol, we shall need to make a brand new venture into open-mindedness. And this is huge, because this is where I found the help in all my other affairs. I had to open my brain to this fact that God could and would and He would sought. We shall need to raise our eyes towards perfection and be ready to walk in that direction. If we seldom matter how halting, it will seldom matter how haltingly we walk. The only question will be, are we ready? Are you ready? Entirely ready. Not kind of ready, but are you ready? Do you want to change or don't you? Okay? This is the men versus the boys. This is the people who do the work or don't do the work. You're talking about it's not going to get you there. Okay? We recognize that in step 4. Pen to paper, hand to keyboard, whatever. We had to do some work. We did some digging. Are you ready to continue taking the action? The chapter in the big book, this is into action. More green, more green. Without action, no results. That's what we're talking about here, okay? We're digging. We're digging. We're doing the work. And that's what this whole deal is about. Getting well from doing work, okay? Looking again at those defects, we are still unwilling to give up. We ought to erase the hard and fast lines that we have drawn. Perhaps we shall be obliged in some cases to still say, this I cannot give up. Just can't give this up yet, man. I'm just not ready. I'm not willing enough to do this. It's just not time yet. But we should not say to ourselves, and I have this highlighted orange with stars all around it, this I will never give up. We just can't. We don't want to put yourself in a position where you're making statements like that are in absolutes. I'll never do this. I just never say never anymore. Period. Because a lot of times I say never and find myself going back. But in this case, this I will never give up. That character defect that you're just holding on to, even if it's causing you pain, you can't shake it. We want to be leery of saying these words, okay? Let's dispose of what appears to be a hazardous open end we have left. This is going to be underlined. It says, it is suggested that we ought to become entirely willing to aim towards perfection. Now, it's spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be aiming at trying to be perfect here, okay? Whatever that goal is, if it's telling the truth all the time, then that's what we need to be aiming for, okay? Whether it's always paying for something, that's what we need to be aiming for, okay? We note that some delay, however, might be pardoned. That word, in a mind of a rationalizing alcoholic, could certainly be given a long-term meaning. He could say, how very easy. Sure, I'll head for perfection, but I'm certainly not going to hurry any. Maybe I can postpone dealing with some of my problems indefinitely. Of course, this won't do. Such a bluffing of oneself will have to go the way of many other pleasant rationalization. At the very least, We shall have to come to grips with some of our worst character defects and take action towards their removal as quickly as we can. I'm going to say let's go ahead and highlight that last paragraph that we read. We've got to come to grips with these things. Hopefully we've done so in our step 4. Hopefully our sponsors coached us through and made us understand that this is not something that serves you well in step 5. And now in step 6, we're really highlighting them, finding out what they are. And in step 7, we're going to talk to God and ask Him to remove them. This last paragraph is highlighted orange, and it finishes the chapter. It says, the moment we say no, never, our minds close against the grace of God. Delay is dangerous, and rebellion may be fatal. It's telling you that, you could go back out by holding on to some of these worst items in stock. It's all we have is a daily reprieve. We're not cured. If we don't do the work, we're on our way back. Okay? This is the exact point at which we abandon limitless objective and move towards God's will for us. That's the bottom line. We are trying to do what it is God's will for us is. If something is causing us pain and we're struggling with it, it's not God's will for us. God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free, man. And so these are the things that we need to be looking at, I can't use the term that I'm not perfect, because no human being on God's green earth is perfect, to not strive for, or, as an excuse to not aim for perfection here. I need to be trying the best that I can to remove these defects of character that are plaguing me, causing me pain, and more than likely causing other people in my life's pain too. So, that's step 6 in the 12 and 12. That's one of my favorite AA readings. I love it. I really do. And I'm not really that huge a fan of the 12 and 12, but I love that chapter, and I love step 7 in this book as well. So at this point, you're working with your sponsor continually, and you should have a pretty decent list of defects of character that you have pulled from your 4th step, and if there's any that are left noticed or haven't come up for you, this is at that time that before you even go into this step that you want to ask God to reveal more to you. What are the things that I hold on to that don't serve me well, and get them down on paper, and get specific with them. We can't fix a problem that we don't know exists. And so we've found out the underlying causes and concerns through our 4th step, and now we are asking God through steps 6 and 7 to help us with their removal. It doesn't happen overnight. Some of them will just be removed. One day I just woke up and I didn't bite my nails anymore. That's just how it was. But for other things, I really have to work hard. I have to work hard, and I really have to pay attention to where I'm at, how I'm feeling. Feelings of a lot of things that I struggled with were feelings of entitlement. Procrastination I mentioned early. Nail biting for me obviously was a big one. Being lazy, dishonesty, character assassination, gossip, anger, infidelity, things that go so much deeper than just thinking that if I put this bottle of alcohol down and don't put it in my system anymore, that I'm going to be fixed. I was on my way back out, people, when I tell you I don't take credit for still being here with the 13 years that I have now. God had a different plan, and I used to sit around and wonder, how do people with double-digit years relapse, I almost found out, because I just wasn't doing the work. I was on my own program, I was trying to work your program. I never worked the program, and this is what the program entails, If you want this, you got to do this. They don't come otherwise. The promises in this book, they come from hard work. And so, that's all for this week. Another 45-minute submission. It seems like I'm keeping them right around 45 minutes, which is good, because I'm kind of running out of gas. Things in my world are good. My biggest problem today is that it's 100 degrees outside. I can live with that. It's better than being 100 degrees outside and being a slave to a drink or a drug. And so, with that, I will say peace. I hope everyone is well. Feel free to go over the work. I can't stress enough how it's not just important enough to work the steps, but living the steps. There's nothing more important than putting it into practical application. We have to take action if we want to see results. And so I hope that's what you guys are doing. I hope you're working with your sponsors. I hope you're rereading what we have done in the big book, looking at the highlighted parts, looking at the green parts, looking at the yellow parts, asking ourselves, are these things coming to fruition for me? Remembering to check in with your higher power, pray. I mean, being recovered, it takes work, but it takes a lot less work than being a slave to active addiction and alcoholism ever did for me. I don't know about anyone else. So I'll see you guys next week. Thank you again for allowing me to serve. As much as sometimes I don't want to do it, this happens to be one of my favorite things to do, and I will continue to do it until we are through all 12 steps and the program is done. Until next week, you guys be well. Namaste.